Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Season 7 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today, I'm going to be covering Talon, the Blade Shadow.
Eventually, my blades will find their way into your heart.
Alright, so let's kick off this guide by looking at his pros and his cons. Talon's a champion with a lot of great AoE damage and some very high burst. If he can get himself onto a squishy champion, they're going to die insanely quickly. He's got very high snowball potential because of his high damage and his roams, and he's also very fun and rewarding. He's a champion with a very high win rate at the moment, and of course there's a reason for it. He's really, really strong. Now Talon, however, does not have a reliable escape. Of course he can use his E ability to jump over walls, but they do have a very long cooldown, and this is not always going to be an option for you. You obviously don't have anything like Ezreal's Arcane Shift. Now Talon, since he is Assassin, is also pretty mediocre if he does fall behind, and he really needs his items. His sustained damage is not the best, but his burst is incredibly high, and of course he needs the damage to be able to delete people. Then finally, Talon does have some pretty damn hard matchups. Of course you do also have matchups that you will absolutely stomp, but there are some that you will struggle in. For your Masteries, you want to go 18 Cunning and 12 Ferocity, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as your Keystone Mastery. As I said before, Talon is a champion that relies on his burst damage, and of course Thunderlord's Decree is going to be pretty easy to proc, and it's going to add even more burst into his combos. For the rest of your Masteries, you want to increase your damage and sustain as much as possible on the Cunning side, while also increasing your damage in the Ferocity side. Talon is all about getting as much damage as possible so he can instantly delete people. For your rune page, you want to go for attack damage reds, armor yellows, magic resist blues, and attack damage quints. All the attack damage from the reds and quints is going to make last hitting a breeze, and your trades are going to be even more effective. Talon is all about his bursts, not attacking over and over again, so the attack speed quints are not worth it. You'll then want to pick up the armor and magic resist just so you're a little bit more durable in the mid lane, and you don't take an assload of damage back from the mid laner. Now you do of course always have the option of going for lethality reds as well, but I find taking attack damage is much more effective, but it is a viable option. For your summoner spells, you want to go for Ignite and Flash. Talon is a fairly squishy champion since he is an assassin, and you can use Flash multiple times throughout the game to save your own life. It's also really strong when used offensively since you'll be able to close a gap on an enemy to follow up with a really high damage from your kit and delete a target. Now, as he is an assassin, he'll also want to try to snowball in the mid lane, so you'll want to grab Ignite as your second summoner spell. It will give him a bunch of extra kill potential, and it can sometimes be the difference in actually securing kills. It's also going to be really strong against champions that do abuse healing, since it does apply Grievous Wounds. Talon's passive is Blade's End, and it adds a nice extra chunk of damage as long as you can hit enemies with your abilities. Talon's abilities wound enemy champions and epic monsters every time they deal damage, lasting 6 seconds and stacking up to 3 times. Talon's basic attacks against enemies with 3 wounds consumes them, causing them to deal between 60 and 160 based on level, plus 200% bonus AD physical damage over 2 seconds. So this is a pretty damn strong passive because having 200% bonus AD ratio on it is really strong. Now you do however have to be hitting the enemy with your abilities to proc this, so that of course means either your ultimate, W, or Q, since your E is not a combat ability. So therefore, obviously you want to hit the enemy champions with your abilities as much as possible, and make sure you follow it up with an auto attack. Your Q ability is Noxian Diplomacy, and it does some pretty solid damage and can even dash to the target enemy. When activated at a long range, Talon dashes onto his target, dealing physical damage. Noxian Diplomacy has a different effect if its target is within 170 range. When activated in melee range, Talon skewers his target and deals 150 plus bonus critical damage percent of Noxian Diplomacy's damage instead. If Noxian Diplomacy kills its target, Talon heals and 50% of its cooldown is refunded. So this is a pretty damn solid ability because it does do a lot of damage and can also be used to dash onto your target. Since it also refunds 50% of the cooldown when it kills a target, it's also going to be great for last hitting if you have to quickly kill a second target. You will also want to try to use this in melee range as much as possible because you get a lot more damage from it, but if you need to use it to dash onto a target, then of course go for it. Your W ability is Rake, and this is your main way of poking the enemy champion, and is also great at cleaning up minion waves. When activated, Talon sends out volleys of daggers, dealing physical damage to every enemy they pass through. The daggers linger for 0.75 seconds before flying back to Talon, dealing physical damage to every enemy they pass through and slowing them for 1 second. So this here is definitely Talon's best ability because it does have a 650 range and it's really solid AoE damage. It's great for throwing out in the lane phase over and over again to poke the enemy champion, and it's fantastic for clearing up minion waves. Now it does also have a scaling slow percentage with 60% at max, which allows you to stick on targets a lot easier. As I said, since this ability is so great in the lane phase, you'll definitely want to max this one first. Your E ability is Assassin's Path, and it gives you some really nice mobility and allows you to take really unique gank paths. When activated, Talon dashes a maximum of 800 units over the target structure or piece of terrain, with the dash's speed based on his own movement speed. Talon cannot cast Assassin's Path on the same piece of terrain for a set duration, which is rather long at between 160 and 60. Now this is a really nice ability because it does give you a form of escape, although you can't use the same piece of terrain again for a very long duration. It is, however, fantastic for roams because you can take some really weird paths since you go over walls and people won't be expecting you usually. Since Assassin's Path only gives you mobility, it's not anywhere near as good as your Q and your W, so you want to max it last, but you definitely want to point it early on so you can actually use it. Your ultimate is Shadow Assault, and it gives you some really solid AoE damage and also stealths Talon in the process. When activated, Talon throws out a ring of blades dealing physical damage to all enemies they pass through and gains invisibility for 2.5 seconds, gaining bonus movement speed for that duration. When Talon emerges from invisibility, the blades converge to his location, dealing the same damage to all enemies they pass through. Breaking invisibility with a basic attack or Noxian Diplomacy causes the blades to converge on the target instead. So this is a really strong ultimate because it has an 80% bonus AD ratio on each hit, which is going to do a lot of damage if you hit both portions. As long as you use this near the enemy and you auto-attack them, it will hit both. Since you will have invisibility and a bunch of bonus movement speed, however, you can use this outside the lane and then run into the lane and appear out of nowhere. It's a great way to gank lanes as well because the enemies won't even see you coming unless they have wards. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. You'll then want to focus on maxing your W ability first because it's really strong in the lane phase and it's great at clearing those minion waves and poking the enemy champion. Next, since it also has a really solid AD ratio and can gap close, you want to max your Q ability second. So that of course means you want to save your E ability for last, but you do need an early point in it at level 4 so you can actually use it for its mobility and gank people. Other than that, save it for last. Talon's pretty decent in the lane phase since he does get a pretty big power spike at level 2. You'll want to try and poke the enemy champion as much as possible in the lane with your rake, but try not to push the lane at the same time. Unless of course you plan on roaming. You'll then want to make sure you ward both sides of the mid lane with your trinket wards and pay attention to your damn minimap. Definitely consider getting a control ward so you permanently have one on one side of the bushes. If you can manage to shove the minion wave, then you also have the option of roaming with your Assassin's Path. Your roam will be a lot more effective when you're level 6, but it can still get you some really easy kills early on in the game since you do have a lot of damage. Talon's teamfighting is also pretty decent, but it's not the best out there. You're a very squishy champion and you're going to need to look for squishy targets that are isolated to delete or just to flank the enemies. Now Talon also makes a pretty decent split pusher. If you're way ahead, then there shouldn't be anybody who can 1v1 you, so put a ton of pressure on a side lane. Make sure you ward deep, and if they do rotate for you, you can easily escape with your Assassin's Path. If however they only send one person and you are stronger, make sure you delete them by activating your Yuma's Ghostblade and of course your Shadow Assault. In a full-blown teamfight, try to keep track of their cooldowns. Don't jump in right at the start because you'll just be CC'd and die incredibly quickly. Now let's look at some of your hard matchups, and first up is Anivia. Anivia is a champion that will eventually have a lot of burst damage and can completely destroy you if she can land her Q ability. Her passive egg ability also gives her a ton of survivability, so even if you can delete her once with all of your cooldowns, you probably can't the second time. She is however a very immobile mage, so try to roam as much as possible and get yourself snowballing that way. Next here we have Brand, and he's a champion that if he can consistently land his skill shots, he's going to completely destroy you. He's probably going to hold on to his E and Q ability for the most part during the lane phase because if you do engage, he can easily stun you and just get away. Against him, obviously you're going to have to dodge as many skill shots as possible, and if he does use his Q ability and it misses, make sure you engage and get some free damage. He's also a fairly immobile champion, so make sure you roam around the map and help your team. For the next hard matchup, I've got Fizz. Now this is more of a skill matchup, but it does have the potential to be very hard for you. He's going to hold on to his Playful and Trickster for whenever you engage and stop a lot of your damage. If he then is able to consistently land his ultimate, he's going to have an absolute ton of kill pressure on you, so you need to dodge it at all costs. Other than that, just try to bait out his Playful and Trickster, and when it is down, it's time to trade. For the last hard matchup, I've got Victor. Victor's a champion that's going to be able to bully you early in the lane phase, and there's not too much you can do about it. He's got some pretty decent ranges, and you have to dodge his laser at all costs because it will start doing a lot of damage. Also, make sure you don't get stunned at all costs because if you do, you're basically just dead. If you're able to easily dodge his W ability and his lasers off cooldown, you should go for trades and be very aggressive. Alright, so let's start this off with the item build, which starts with either a long sword, refillable potion, and a warding totem, or if you need extra sustain, a corrupting potion and a warding totem. I like to go for Longsword Refillable Potion myself, but both are very viable. For our core build, we then have the Duskblade, Yumu's Ghost Blade, and a Black Cleaver. This is going to give you a ton of lethality early on, and of course attack damage, which is going to make you a very, very bursty champion. The Black Cleaver is also a really solid item on Talon because he does have a lot of AoE damage, and he can shred armor from multiple targets at the same time in team fights. Of course, with this build, you're also going to have 30% cooldown reduction, which is a fantastic thing to have. For our boot options, we first have the Boots of Mobility if you're looking to roam a lot, Merc Treads if you're against high AP and CC, Ninja Tabbies against high AD teams, and CDR Boots if you want to hit that CDR cap. For the item pool, we first have Edge of Night, which is great for its spell shield and of course lethality. Whenever you're going for a kill on the enemy champion, you'll want to have this spell shield activated so you can block something when you're going in. For the second item here, we have the Guardian Angel, which adds even more damage but also has a great defensive. It's an item that basically gives you a second life, which is of course great on a squishy champion like Talon. If you're against an AP assassin or if there's a bunch of magic damage on the enemy team, a Maw is also a fantastic buy. This item will also CDR cap you, gives you some nice attack damage and a great defensive shield that will help you avoid getting bursted. If you're then looking for some lifesteal, you could get either the Death's Dance or Ravenous Hydra. Both are really solid ways to get some lifesteal, but if you want to CDR cap you and you're only at 30%, go for Death's Dance, and if you want a nice AoE activation and great AoE damage, go for the Ravenous Hydra. Then finally, of course, you have your armor penetration items in the LDR and the Mortal Reminder. If you are going for one, usually I would go for the LDR, but if you need Grievous Wounds badly, then of course you have to go for the Mortal Reminder so you can stop healing. For the example fill build though, I take that core build, get some Boots of Mobility because I like to roam around a lot, and then the Edge of Night and a Guardian Angel. You're going to have an absolute ton of damage with all the attack damage and lethality, and of course a bunch of armor shred from the Black Cleaver. This means you'll at least stand a chance against the really tanky champions. You then of course have the really solid shield from the Edge of Night to block spells, and the really solid defensive Bring Back to Life from the Guardian Angel. And that's all I've got for mid lane Talon. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you guys did enjoy the video, and please also check out the video description below. I have linked to all my social medias and of course my Twitch and my Discord server as well. If you do need any additional help, please hop into the Discord server. There are many people there that would be glad to help you. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, have a good day, and peace.